Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Eason, here with life coach Dean McMurray, the military medium, and this is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. And Dean, we have been wanting to get messages and emails from listeners, and they have been sending them in. A few of them in particular have just been really inundating us with really great stuff to talk about.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
It's all really good.
That is a good thing. The mail call, the grab bag, as they say.
There you go. Yeah,
whatever term you want to use.
There's absolutely no clue that we get that you were ever in the military.
I have no clue. I just came up with something, Walt. I was like, all right, just go with it, Dean. I don't know. It's like the Super Bowl, right? Fumble and just pick it up and go.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Okay. Well, anyway, we received an email from one of our regulars, Barbie, yesterday, and she has some questions for you and for me also to address. And she's got a bunch of them here, things that she wants, little advanced warning predictions about, that kind of thing. I don't know how much you actually do prediction, but hey, gives us something to talk about to start things off here. So she actually included a lot of stuff. I'm going to just keep the part that directly addressed you, and then I'm going to save the rest of her email for some of the other shows where she brought up other co-hosts.
Absolutely.
But where you're concerned, she says, first of all, how is 2021 going to play out economically for small businesses in America? I don't know if you can do that one. Can you do that one?
I look into my crystal ball, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting because 2020 and everything, 2019, 2020 was supposed to be all about change. We saw, I think we were just talking about Super Bowl just a little bit ago, or making a joke about it. And I think one of the funny, everybody talks about commercials, and they had that lemon commercial, right? Raining lemons and making lemonade out of lemons. But I guess to get back on track, what Barbie was asking about, 2019, 2020 was all about change. 2021 and going into 2022 is supposed to be all about implementing these changes. So we're going to start seeing the big gears moving into forward and in some type of progression. What does that mean for small businesses? Will some go out of business? Yep, some will. We just know that. Right. And some already have. Some great big businesses have.
Yeah.
It is too finite to really give any prediction on how it's going to all kind of shift out. I think on some of it, what I do feel is that we're going to teeter on the brink of what I don't want to say, because I hate going there, is I don't want to say financial collapse, but financial issues on a bigger scale. And I know we're already there, right? There's a lot of stuff going on. Sure. But what I'm saying is like even bigger stuff. And it feels like we almost teeter on the edge of that and flirt with it and then almost come back, kind of like the shows where the cars come up on two wheels and it's like, is it going to go over? And then it comes back down. So do I feel that is, will play out at some point in this next year? Yes. Do I feel like it's, some big collapse or whatever? I don't get anything like that, but I do feel that, the roller coaster ride isn't over, so to speak, for businesses. And we know that there's a lot of stuff with the new administration and everything. And I'm not going to get into the weeds of what they're implementing, because these are decisions, again, that people that make decisions that people either make or don't make, right, or enact on, affect our future. And we know that. And whether they're laws, or it doesn't matter what it is, or it could be your neighbor. And so the thing that I would share is, we're really going to see what's more important is seeing a new culture within businesses. Just like over, I guess, centuries or time, we see species evolve and adapt to the environment, right? because we got to continue to evolve. And that's the same that's going to happen with businesses. And we're going to see, and we've already seen this new niched businesses emerge, but also it's going to be, how do I want to say? I almost want to say like how you can kill a bunch of cockroaches with poison, and then a new strain of cockroach comes back that's just impervious to that point, right? So it's almost like the new evolution of business that is a bit more robust or has learned to adapt to the environment. So there's changes yet to happen, but as far as, hey, if you have a business, I want to know, as a business owner, what's going to happen. And again, I'm going to go back to that energy is still so turbulent, so much in flux that it's really hard to narrow down with any level of certainty, especially for a year.
Sure. That makes sense.
Right. I mean,
makes total sense.
A blind psychic is going to tell you that, right? So it's like,
I don't consider myself to be psychic, and I can tell you that, right. And I can even go a step further than that. We've just come through a year that I think most people, if you kind of take a poll, they'd say it was a pretty bad year. A lot of people would say
challenging
that.
At least, yeah.
Yeah, I don't really think it was a bad year, but I think most people would say that.
Yeah.
And even in the worst years, if you go back in our history, like 1929, the stock market crash leading to a depression that really just clobbered the country by like 1930, 1931. Right. Even during that era, there were small businesses that were thriving.
Yes.
And we forget that part. We overlook that part.
Yeah.
And then you look at, like, everybody likes to point to the 50s, right? There was, the 50s was this wave of good fortune and prosperity and so forth. And there were huge numbers of small businesses going out of business.
Yeah.
And that's because, at that point, it was numbered in the tens of thousands. Now, the number of businesses here in this country numbers in the millions in terms of small businesses.
Right.
Drawing a generalization about millions of businesses is ridiculous because they're all different. And they all have different clientele, and they have different levels of success going on, and different levels of failure going on, different degrees of ability to manage. So looking for a single thread in that, that's kind of like looking for a single drop of water in an ocean. Good luck with that one.
Right.
You're just not going to find it.
Well, and the thing that you brought up with those 2 points in time, Walt, are, one you brought up was kind of mid depression, but you think about it, after the depression, what happened to businesses or people that were starting businesses? It skyrocketed, right? Because they were on the rebound. Post-war, because everything was, recycle, and a lot of businesses, like you say, were going out of business because a lot of people didn't have money. And when they came back, what happened? They were in a boom, right? Baby boomers, everything, because post-war, all the soldiers were coming home, right? But what happened to a lot of those? We'll take maybe World War II. Not that I remember my life during World War II, maybe that life, but you think about maybe an organization, and I don't have one off the top of my head, specifically, but maybe they were making ammunition, say, for the government. And all of a sudden they lost the contract. What are you going to do as an organization? Are you going to retool and reorganize and start making automobiles? Are you going to change, are you going to start making, I don't know, dolls, chocolate, so adapting and overcoming, I think has been kind of a watchword for, really anything, but we haven't seen it in so long. There's been such a, there's been turmoils, but we haven't seen I can even think of that level.
I can think of a brand that actually fits what you just described. You talked about aircraft parts changing over to automobiles. That's BMW.
Well, there you go. Yeah,
BMW started off as an airplane manufacturer.
There you go.
For Germany.
Right.
That's who they were. That's who they were building for. And then the end of the war came, and they were forbidden from doing anything in aircraft. So what did they do? They went to making cars.
There you go.
And did a pretty darn good job.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Very successful. Now, did all the companies make that kind of switch? No. Some of them didn't. Some of them gave up, threw in the towel. Some of them just tried to complain and continue to make planes and didn't get anywhere, or whatever their industry might have been. So once again, it comes down to the individuals. How are the individuals reacting? And there are going to be as many different reactions as there are individuals.
Yeah.
I mean, you can count on that, right? Have you ever had 5 clients in a row who were the same? I mean,
Never.
Seriously, I mean, that's
Never.
just not possible.
Nah. Unless I was caught in a time loop, which hasn't happened that I remember.
I can't rule that one out, I guess.
If I come back 5 minutes from now and I see this loop on this this video, and I go, it hasn't happened yet. It's like,
well, just keep your eyes, keep your eyes
yeah.
open for Bill Murray in case he shows up. If he shows up, then we know there's a problem, but
right,
other than
absolutely. But it's a great point though, is that, I think the biggest thing is talking about, if somebody was to ask, saying, the words of adapting and overcoming, and then also everybody loves to use the catchphrase pivoting, right? And just really trying to make the best out of the situation that you can. So yeah, BMW, other things, don't become the Blockbuster, analogy. Nobody thought Blockbuster would go out of business. Here was this conglomerate, and even towards the end, nobody saw that there was any issues with it. They were actually opening more franchise. And and then it just went poof, almost not overnight, but pretty quick. And so kind of crazy. I kind of think about that, like, how do you adapt? How do you change with the environment? Do you have to change completely what you're doing? How do you, as somebody, for example, maybe you work in an environment, Dean, I work, my job, say you're a massage therapist. Maybe your job, you have to physically make contact with the client. Like, how do you do that? And maybe your state or county or whatever says, what, you cannot, it's got to be shut down. Maybe you're not considered a essential business, right? The quote unquote. How do you adjust? And that's not a question that I can answer for the business owner. They have to figure out, maybe it's the first AI virtual massage therapy. I don't know. I don't know how that works. But I know that, we were talking, Walt, you and I were just talking about Zoom before we came live, and, different platforms and just it's kind of interesting, like how more podcasts there are and more people getting out there, and like, hey, I can't do anything this way, but hey, I can, I have a phone, or I have a computer, I
can do it virtually.
There's technology at our fingertips, and almost
pretty cool.
Almost every household, at least in America that I'm aware of, that, I get that there's a few, but don't have certain technologies, but almost every household has a computer or a phone, right? That
Something
can connect.
Usually.
Could suffice. And so what I'm trying to say is, we do have tools available to us, even if you have to go to your local public library to do it.
And some businesses are going to adapt. Some businesses are not going to adapt.
That's
some
right.
are going to succeed. Some are going to fail. And there are inevitably going to be people in the businesses themselves and people outside the businesses looking in who are going to point to the broader economy and say, well, it was either the broader economy's fault because it went down, or it was the broader economy's was the one that was doing it because the economy went up. But really, it's the business owners. And every one of them is going to make different decisions, and that's what's going to drive the businesses. And they're going to have different vibrations too. We talk about vibration all the time. They're going to have different vibration levels.
That's right.
I mean, they may not know what that means, but they're still going to have them, and they're still going to be driving their experience with them. So,
absolutely,
everyone's going to be
different. And I also recognize and understand that everybody, listening to this right now lives in different parts of the country or world or whatever, and the economic conditions wherever you live could be vastly different than where I live. And, it could be better, it could be worse, it could be the same. But at the same time, understand that, we're responsible at the end of the day. And
we
understand.
Are.
Yeah. And,
I like to remember something else too. I like to remember that ultimately, no matter where I am, I take myself with me.
I love that.
right? So because that's true, if I'm a business owner,
Right.
if I change from one part of the country to the other, go from the rural area to the city, or from the city to a rural area or suburb or anywhere in between, I still take myself with me. So if I've been having trouble, which I have had a lot of in my own past, I've experienced that directly, and then I move, guess what? My trouble doesn't go away because I brought myself with me. On the other hand, if I'm doing well and I move, guess what? I do well because I brought myself with me. So it really comes down to it. We have this tendency to look outside of ourselves and say, "Oh, those outside conditions are driving and determining our lives." No, they don't. No, they don't. Not even a little bit. They only do to the degree that we say those outside events control our lives. That's how far. Anything beyond that just isn't accurate. I mean, now I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm not saying that it's so simple to just, retune to whatever we want to retune to. We are certainly influenced. We allow ourselves to be influenced by outside events, but we don't have to be. No matter what the outside event is, we could be. And I'm, by the way, I don't want to stay on this particular point very long because I don't want to like where I'm going with it. But we could be in the midst of a massive depression with a complete totalitarian government, and still have a surviving and thriving and abundant lifestyle if we are able to shift our mindset completely away from all that crap.
Right.
And similarly, now I'm going to go to the more fun side. We could be living in a totally abundant society, where there's everybody is doing well, or nearly everybody's doing well, and everybody's just growing and flowing. And we're in a really, really bad space where we're just, turning ourselves down, and we will not thrive in that society.
Right.
Because of where our mindset is.
Right.
So it really doesn't matter what the external is. I mean, does it matter? Yes, we feel it, we experience it, but ultimately we have the control. We get to decide where we're going to put our focus. So we can point to the outside all we want to, but at that point, what are we doing other than putting ourselves in victim mode, really?
Right.
Right. Next question she had. I don't know if this one even fits into medium or psychic mode, but I'll bring it in. Why are people skeptical of the COVID vaccine?
Ooh, great question. Well, I think there's a lot of things, and I don't want to speak for anybody else. And I can't because, I don't have their perspective. It can be a lot of things, it could be their religious beliefs. It could be, but I think when it comes down to it's a belief in something, whether it's, what somebody tells them, what they read, what their religion tells them. There can be a lot of things, or maybe it's the facts that they know is from their personal perspective. Maybe they know someone that got sick or injured. I'm not saying, and I'm not taking either side. I'm not. The thing that I would share is that when you come at something, you're coming at it from your perspective because that's all you know.
That's right.
And so I really can't comment for anybody else because I don't have their perspective. And really, when you think about it, whether people want to admit it or not, there is still a slice of emotional, aspect to it because, it's like, I am not getting vaccinated because, and then they say whatever, I don't believe in it or whatever, or I am getting vaccinated and this is because, right? And so, whether it's based in fact, what you understand as fact or what you've seen or experienced or whatever, it comes from a personal perspective. And it is driven by an aspect of emotion as well. Now we understand that. So
sure.
So I can't really. I don't really think it goes in either boat. I don't think this may be more of a philosophical question or something more to mull over. But it's something that's relevant and is out there. I guess to put it more into, if you want to call it psychic or the woo-woo world, talk about more about when the conversation goes to vaccines or goes to anything, where is it vibrationally? I don't care where your stance is on it, but where is it? Because we can have a conversation about it. And as long as you keep the vibration either neutral or positive, hopefully positive, and you can have any stance that you want on it, that means that you're really not, you're not connected with an agenda of trying to make other people believe your point of view, or very, oh my God, I can't believe that you're not getting it, or I can't believe that you did get it, because there's the both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And, and God bless both sides that are doing it. And it's just
Sure.
like, I don't, certainly, again, I'm not taking sides either way.
I'm with
So,
you.
but yeah, and I really think when it comes to it is, I would challenge folks to really look at where things are vibrationally with the conversation, where are things going? And, it's more of about a personal journey when it comes to that. If you choose to go get the vaccine, perfect. If you're not, great. Either way, that's up to you. And I'm not here to say, oh my God, so
I agree with you. I don't think it even matters, to be perfectly honest. And the reason I don't think it matters is regardless of which viewpoint you take,
right.
If you're taking the viewpoint that says, well, people should be taking the vaccine, you're basically coming at it from a lack viewpoint, saying, oh, if they don't take the vaccine, everybody's going to get sicker.
Right.
And if you take it from the point of view that you shouldn't get the vaccine, oh, you shouldn't get the vaccine because then the government will be controlling you. Both of them are fear-based.
Right.
There are no positions that I know of where the COVID vaccine is concerned that are not fear-based positions.
Right.
The only one that I know of that's not fear-based is just not to worry about it. And I don't worry about it because I know perfectly well those who want the vaccine are going to get it. And they're actually scrambling all over each other to get it right now.
Right.
And those who don't want the vaccine are not going to get it. They're going to stay away from it. And you know what? It's going to work out great because it's all vibrational. So here's the way I look at it. Those who want and need the vaccine in their own minds are going to get the vaccine. And guess what it's going to do for their vibration? It's going to raise their vibration. Right. And those who don't want the vaccine and who are just adamantly anti-vax are going to feel good because they didn't get the vax. So guess what? Everyone feels better. What could that possibly lead to other than a reduction or eventually elimination of the pandemic? I don't see how it can produce anything else. So I don't see any reason to worry one way or the other. It just it'll take care of itself. It'll all work itself out exactly the way it needs to. I don't have to give it any attention at all. Right. She actually followed up with a second question. She said, were people skeptical of the polio vaccine when it was first released? I think we can safely say some were and some weren't. Some were lining up saying, give it to me. Others were saying, keep it away. And it worked out.
Well, you think about it too is, talking about, I'm sure if you go back far enough, when Western medicine really, traditional medicine really came into the picture, and when people wanted to give them shots, they were probably like, keep those witch doctors away from me, give me just give me some willow bark or whatever. I don't know. But, I'm, throughout history, anytime that there's change, there's always both sides, right?
Mm-hmm,
and
absolutely.
And the biggest thing is, like you were talking about, Walt, is if you can come at it from a neutral corner, if you can come, which is sometimes challenging at times, but it can be done. And if it's not done in a fear-based aspect, it's like, and if you're trying to figure it out, I guess, instead of being charged in one of those corners saying either for or against something, and that's, you could insert whatever label, versus doesn't have to be vaccines. It could be politics. Blank, really. It could be anything, right? Yeah. Good Lord, is canned baby food or raw baby food? It's like, I don't know, diapers or cotton, whatever. And it's like, where does this stop? Where does this stop? And for me, it stops with me because I have the ability. One of the things, and I was actually having a brain fart moment. I was a vapor lock, I call it.
A vapor lock. Ooh, there's a new
lock.
term. I haven't heard that one. Okay.
Some time back, several years ago, Archangel Gabriel actually was giving me an acronym, and it was code. It was CODE, right? And I was like, code? What do you mean, like code? And and I was like, oh, it's like it stands for something like
cipher.
Cipher, right? And so one day I was actually sitting down and I started channeling Melchizedek, right? And so
I don't even know what that is. You're gonna have to define that one.
So Melchizedek, and I know I'm messing up some. He's like, are you mispronouncing the name? That's fine. They're cool with it. But basically, they're a divine entity, right? And it was telling me that it stood for C is for compassion, O is for oppression, D is for depression, and E, I can't even remember what it stands for, and that was the last one that I was. But basically, what it was the question and answer of all these aspects of this code, and it was almost like talking about how it's used in a fear-based society. And what are the things that we can do? Like talking about, I remember one of the questions that I asked, and I said, so, let's talk about compassion. And I said, so even, like somebody, that is a murderer does, what we consider as a society, evil things, like if they were, a serial killer or whatever. And because even somebody that is doing heinous acts still has a compassion for something. They're passionate, right? They have and talking about the aspect of, if I jump down to depression, one of the things I know there's, if you call it itself, there's epidemic going on with a lot of people dealing with depression, right? And
Sure.
talking about the number of suicides, and this is going back a number of years, and talking about how we vibrationally, where it is on a scale, if you will, so we have a understanding, even though there isn't a scale, but so our 3D minds can figure that out, and if you will, and saying, where are you vibrationally right now? Why, what is bringing in the depression, and what continually brings you into this cycle, and what are some things that you can do to break the cycle? And I know I owe you the answer on what the last one is, and I'm completely yeah.
Oh, don't worry about it.
Anyways, this is gonna
we'll
bug me.
assume that E,
But
E stands
anyways,
for something important. We'll just
yeah,
figure it out
well,
later.
if nothing else, I'll have it for next show. But the thing that I want to share is, we were just talking about it, and I was like, oh my God, this just sounds like talking about the fear-based aspect, and how you can use everything. And that was one of the things too. Doesn't matter what you're talking about, you can use things to either control people or society, and you can also use it conversely to support people and to lift them up. And it's really where you are at vibrationally, individually, and what your intent is. So at the end of the day, what do you want to use it for? Because remember, just like this pen, I can either write somebody a really great note, or, in theory, my intention, I could also harm somebody with this pen if I wanted to, but I'm not going, obviously it's all the intention. What is the intent and the energy and vibration of that? But,
Absolutely.
But it just made me kind of flash back on that. But, I think it's more about as a species and as individuals, maybe kind of giving ourselves a check, if we will, and go, where do we want to be? Where are we? And how do we get there? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, so we talk about our daily dose of happy, and, is that our vaccine, Walt? Is that the vaccine, the daily dose of happy? Give ourselves a little shot and get us through yet another day. And
I think so, because ultimately the whole point of a daily dose of happy is to raise vibration, both of the hosts and of the listeners. And if we succeed in doing that, anytime that we raise our vibration, that's like a vaccine. It's a vaccine against all of the stuff we don't like, because it refocuses, or we refocus more accurately. We refocus our attention on what we like, what we prefer, what we enjoy. Right. And in the process, through the law of attraction, we get more of that. So is it a vaccine? Yeah, of course. I mean, what does a vaccine do? A vaccine gives you the state of health you're looking for. Well, focusing your attention gives you the state of life that you're looking for. It's the same concept. It's just a little bit different applied, but that's about it.
Well, and it also builds up a resiliency too, right? Kind of that barrier. So you think the same thing that the more you practice your daily dose of happy, the more resilient not only you become as well, right? And when you go through that little challenge in life, which is going to happen off and on, the more resiliency you build up, you bounce back a little bit quicker each time.
We talked a little bit about that yesterday, in the sense that the more that we learn to stay on the higher vibrational wavelengths, just by refocusing our attention constantly, all three of us, myself, Louie, and Amy, we're all agreeing that we've noticed over time, I'm sure you've noticed it too, over time, the more that you stay in the higher vibe plane, so to speak, all of a sudden, all those thoughts you were so worried about trying to keep track of back when you were in the lower vibe area, suddenly, I mean, you weren't actually focusing on them anymore. You're focused more on whether you're feeling good or not. And all of a sudden, they're all easier to keep track of.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that? It's like I don't have to do anything. I'm just very aware of where my thoughts are going without having to do a darn thing, simply because I'm in a higher vibe state.
Remember the old bumper sticker back in the 80s? Maybe it's just me, but there used to be, I remember my dad used to have one saying, "It's hard to soar with eagles when you're associating with the turkeys."
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
But the same thing is talking about bringing your vibration from here up to here. And there's a couple things. There's less traffic.
There is.
And also, as you go into that, is the aspect of the vibration is it just seems like it clears everything else out of your way. And like you said, you're really not doing a lot. It's more just about awareness. It doesn't feel like you have to do a lot of things physically anymore. No. It's just, it's just like, hey,
this is easy. This is, I've got this. Yeah.
It's
when I was in crazy. The lower vibe space, it wasn't, I've got this. It's like, oh my God, has somebody got me?
Yeah. It's like walking through Jello, right? It's every day. And it's
but when you're in the high vibe space, it's easy. It's like your arms are out and you're soaring. That's it.
On? Yeah. It's like trying to ski uphill versus learning, hey, if I go to the top of the mountain, it's just super easy, right?
Or do you get somebody like Telemark coming along to tell you how you ski uphill? But that's another subject entirely.
I love it. But
she's also got, Barbie really hit us with a lot of questions today. Here's another one.
It's great.
She says, have conspiracy theories been magnified or grown to such proportions today since the Kennedy era? I think she means, do we have more conspiracy theories now than we had in the past? And I can directly address that because that's American history. And the answer is the conspiracy theories today are just the ones of today. We've had massive conspiracy theories going back to before the founding of the country. And I can tell you one of them, and it's a really funny one. George Washington was at the center of this particular one.
Really?
This was before he became George Washington as we knew him. He was just a resident of Virginia. He was a plantation owner, a slave owner.
Right.
But he also wanted to run for local government. He wanted to be, I don't remember what the exact title was, but it was the local assembly or local town council. It was that kind of equivalent thing. And he figured, well, he came from aristocracy, right? He had all the right connections from the motherland. He had the wealth and so forth. He'd be a shoo-in. He lost handily. And he found out the reason that he lost handily was that his opponent went into the local pub and bought drinks for everybody all the way up to the election, and they all voted for him. And he said, well,
that probably happened.
It did happen. This is historical fact.
I was gonna.
This is historical fact, and of course he cried foul, right? Well, this isn't fair. Until he decided to change the conspiracy theory around. So next election, he bought the drinks for everybody, and he got elected.
Person with the deepest pockets.
That's right. No, that's the funnier side of it. But there's also the non-funny side. Have there been conspiracy theories? Well, yeah, quite a few of them. Go back to the 19th century. How about slavery?
Right.
The big conspiracy theory was if you end slavery, you're going to completely crash the economy.
Oh, sure.
That was big. That was like one of the major arguments made in the South. Now, did it actually crash the economy? Well, I think the economy did crash, but I think you could attribute that more to the Civil War than anything else, which pretty much
Right.
decimated
No,
the
yeah.
South. But yeah, there was an economic crash. Did they recover from it? Yeah, they did, and they actually managed to recover despite the fact that they were still, treating people of color
Yeah.
horribly,
Right.
but they still
Yep.
managed to pull it off. So was the conspiracy theory valid? I guess it depends who you talk to. I think a lot of people would say, no, it wasn't valid at all. But there are going to be some people who would say, yeah, it was valid.
Right.
And you can find the same thing with every
Right.
ethnic group. There were conspiracy theories about Catholics. There were theories about Jews. There were theories
Right.
about Irish. There were theories about just about every group that ever emigrated to this country in large numbers.
Right.
Italians, huge numbers of conspiracy. Well, some of them exist to this day. What do you think stories of the mafia are all about? I mean, was there an actual American mafia? Yeah. Did the American mafia do everything the conspiracy theory said? No. I mean, it reminds me of a joke that comes from a movie in the 1990s called Sneakers. In the movie, the two main protagonists are having this discussion, and one of them learns that the other one was involved being like an accountant, so to speak, a computerized accountant for the mafia. He says, "You were an accountant for organized crime?" And his friend says, "Trust me, they're not that organized."
Nice.
But the fact is, we've had conspiracy theories since the founding of the country, and even before the founding of the country. And there are always going to be. I mean, here's another way of looking at conspiracy theories. Something we are now seeing more of in a way that a lot of us hadn't seen in our lifetime. And I'll say that the reason we hadn't seen it is because we had Walter Cronkite. Walter Cronkite was not the only one, but he was, in my mind, the leader of what I would call the balanced news movement. And that was new. That did not previously exist in this country before the Cronkite era. Before the Cronkite era, you had pretty much with the newspapers what you have today with the major media sites. On the right today, you have Fox News and OAN and Newsmax. On the left, you have like NBC and CNN. I mean, you can see everybody knows where the dividing line is. Well, the same thing was true with newspapers going back to the 19th and early 20th centuries. Everybody knew which newspapers leaned Democratic. Everybody knew which newspapers leaned Republican. And when I said leaned, I was being generous. They were propagandists for the left. They were propagandists for the right. And they made today's propagandists look like petty, dictators by comparison. So yeah, conspiracy theories have been around for a long, long time. And as long as politics is around, they're probably not going anywhere.
Right.
And we were lucky. We had a respite during the Cronkite era. I think that was very fortunate. But, and that could come back. I think it'd be great if it did come back. It might even come back sometime soon. You never know. But I wouldn't assume that that's what the norm was that we moved away from, because it wasn't the norm. Historically, it was the exception.
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and you were talking about, I just remember in high school, some of the political ads and, because it was part of history, and it was really kind of interesting, but and I think it has but getting back to your question, has it grown? I think we're seeing more of it because of social media. I think, I don't know if the amount is more, but we're just seeing it more because everything is shoved in our face. And so many social media platforms, I mean, some have actually grown almost overnight or exploded, right? With everybody, wanting to go to all these different platforms. And so you got even more avenues or ways for folks to get information. And, if somebody has a conspiracy theory or story that they want to spread, geez, that stuff can, as long as it's interesting, it's going to go like,
oh yeah.
Right. And, sometimes millions of people in a very quick time. So I think for it to get out very quickly, it just gets spread quicker, with technology now. Versus it might take a week for it to really get around, right? Like they had to ship the newspaper or they had to wait till the weekly or the nightly news, at least till 6 o'clock or 10. but
I
now
mean, George Washington had to wait until the town crier told everybody.
heary, right? So it's like, oh man, it's crazy. But I guess I don't feel that we're in a time of exploding. I think we're just hearing about it more just because of technology. It's, I think they were always there. We're just seeing it more. So
a lot of things get amplified because of technology, and we're still coming to terms with that. We're still, I mean, I think as a culture worldwide, not just America, worldwide, I think the culture is still a bit in shock and continues to be in shock because of how quickly it's all grown up. And that's going to have a certain degree of fallout no matter what happens.
Is it grown up?
Well, it's like, we could debate that one too.
Right. That'd be maybe another day, but
right. Oh, that's funny.
But yeah, it's it's just kind of crazy. Yeah, and I know it's not happened overnight, but it kind of seems like it has, and it grows in these leaps and bounds, and it's just like, wow, it's just really fascinating. It really, how us as a society, as a worldwide society, develop, and it's just how we hit these pockets of time. It's almost like nothing, all of a sudden, kaboom, and all this stuff happens, and then nothing, really it's kind of quiet for a while, and all of a sudden something sparks up. And then, whether it's a lot of turmoil or growth or whatever's going on, and we're in a time like that now. There's a lot of turmoil, but if you look deeper, there's a lot of cool stuff going on. I mean,
there is.
I just read an article like, what was it? China, NASA, is it the EU, or sending, are they sending, is it a combined spaceship, or is it together? I don't know, or 3 separate to Mars?
Are you talking about the photos from Mars? That's the
yeah. Well,
Chinese
yeah,
mission.
but there's actually one with the flying drones and all kinds of cool stuff.
Oh yeah.
There's other stuff. I mean, that it's kind of interesting. It takes the backseat to everything else, but it's like when you look deeper, it's just like there's some really interesting stuff that is going on behind the scenes, and it's just like, we are living in an interesting time, and it's going to become another mile marker in history. And when the kids now, I think about my son that's 10 and my daughter that's 14, when they're give them another 10 years or better, and you'd be like, hey, remember 10 years ago or 5 years ago, or it's just like any one of us that are whatever age you are now, look back in time, and
kind of makes me wonder if we're going to reach a point where the whole thing will be moving so quickly that we'll say, remember last month?
Yeah, kind of. Be like, whoo, that was so 5 minutes ago.
That's right.
Oh,
I think it's really important to do everything for those of us who are conscious creators, for us to do everything in our power to disconnect ourselves from all those fears, because that's really what we're talking about here. We're talking about a variety of different kinds of fears.
Right.
And,
absolutely.
The more that we disconnect from them, the more we get that perspective that David Strickle, who the streamer David used to do the Tuesday show before you, would talk about, that pulled back perspective that source energy has. Because when you look at it from that perspective, everything looks great. There's nothing wrong with any of it at that point. The only time it's like watching a traffic accident from 1,000 miles up using a camera, as opposed to being in the traffic accident. Being in it is an entirely different experience from seeing it from above. It looks like a slow motion ballet,
right?
But from being in the accident, it looks like instant death,
right?
Or perhaps, hopefully not. But that's how big the difference can be.
Right.
Perspective is everything. When we gain that better perspective, we basically set ourselves up for the better experience. And not everybody's going to set themselves up for that perspective, and we got to be okay with that too. We've got to have the perspective that says, you know what? Some people are going to make choices I don't like.
Yep.
But if I can just take away the fact that I don't like it and just let them be what they're going to be, I'm going to be happier for it. And I won't be feeding them any bad energy. So, it's going to work out both ways better just by me pulling back like that.
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So I completely agree with you.
All right. Well, let's move on to, okay. She's touching on all these major issues. We got some more here.
Okay.
This actually goes back to the COVID vaccine. She says, will the entire world be inoculated with Pfizer or Moderna's vaccine, or will other less recognized vaccines play a role globally?
No. Well, because their first question was, will the entire globe be, immunized? And there's going to be enough people divided, whether they're personal beliefs or religious beliefs, and within the next year, that it is going to take a lot longer, because that's a pretty broad statement. The entire Earth. That's talking about the indigenous tribes that have, hardly seen any outside inhabitants. That's talking about, the people that are very staunchly divided on the issue. That would take lots of years. And, will it happen? I don't know, but I don't feel it happening this year. But my first answer was no, it's not. I wouldn't.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you. And I would add, first of all, not only is the entire world not going to be inoculated, the medical leaders don't think that the world needs to be completely inoculated. They talk about herd immunity. They can't really seem to agree on what they think constitutes a certain level of herd immunity. I've heard anywhere from like 2/3 to 3/4 of the population. But wherever that point is, that means there's a large chunk of the population that doesn't get immunized before the disease is essentially reduced or eradicated, reduced to a point where it's just manageable or eradicated.
Right.
And, I would be kind of surprised if the disease ever does get eradicated, just because so few diseases ever get eradicated.
Right.
The ones that we have licked have never been eradicated. The only one I can think of that was ever eradicated was smallpox.
Right.
That's the only one I know of.
And, interesting, I was just going to bring that up, is, the whatever strain they end up finally going with after all this is, kind of a non-issue, right? Like we talk about smallpox and all that. When I was in the military, every year you had to make sure your immunizations were up, your deployment readiness, right?
Right.
And that was one of them. The smallpox vaccine was still given. And so, I would really see that, if anybody, whether it's infants or young people that are still getting a regularly series, maybe the older generation, and then also probably our military at some level, that, I'm sure that they're going to add it in there at some level, saying, well, let's just add it to the soup, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as far as, kind of just, you talk about it kind of going away because they came out with the vaccine for it.
And I think we're going to reach the point, probably not this year, but probably within the next 2 or 3 years, where vaccination of it is going to be considered almost unimportant. And the reason I say that is I know of at least two pursuits for a treatment that eliminates the virus or the body, just eliminates it within a really, really short period of time. So you could have a massive infection, you take this treatment and it just clears it up. It cures you. And, when you have that available, why are you going to bother with a whole bunch of vaccination? And
now, is that just speaking to COVID, or is that speaking to a lot of other things as well?
Well, actually, a lot of things, because the two that I know of, one's in Australia and the other one's in Europe. I'm trying to think where in Europe it is. The one in Australia is called INA 051. The one in Europe, I can't remember what, I just read about it the other day. But both of them originated before the COVID pandemic. They were attempting to create new medicines that could treat a wide range of infections. And it turned out that what they were doing was also effective against COVID.
Huh. And somebody said, we need like a mass pandemic. Let's test it out. Now I'm going to start a new conspiracy.
Here goes the conspiracy theory. You heard it here first, folks.
I was waiting as soon as you went in. But no, it's really, I actually came up with one of the predictions. Believe it or not, it was on another podcast, and they wanted me to do predictions for 2020, and I was like, oh Lord. But one of the things that I did get was like huge advances in biomedicine, like in that aspect with medicines and biotech and stuff. And and a lot of them aren't talked about like on a big, I mean, this stuff is just fascinating to me. That should be really like, look at these guys are doing just such, they're, and then, but of course it takes a back seat to everything, which is going on. So, but I was like, it's interesting to me because we are living in a very, interesting times, very exciting. There are some very, huge advances in medicine.
Oh yeah.
And just, outside of the COVID, stuff. And like you said, that was going on way before. And there's
producing some really interesting results too. I mean, the one from Australia. Now they announced this last September. They have just completed getting their funding so they can do all their testing. So it's going to be a while before this comes out. But with their original testing, they were testing on ferrets. They infected all these ferrets with COVID, and then they gave them what is the equivalent of a nasal spray. When this thing is done, it's going to be something like what's the Dristan mist. It's going to be something you just snort into your nose, and it just cures you. They cured 96% of the ferrets.
Wow!
Very first try, without doing any extra work on the thing.
Huh?
And that's their benchmark. That's their starting point.
Wow!
So once they get that into testing, I'm sure they have to go through a bunch of steps to get that to the point where they could test it on humans, and they start getting the results there. Then it's like, what can we do to get that up to 98%, 99%? At that point you have basically a perfect cure that you snort into your nasal passage, and 5 minutes later you're fine.
Wow.
That's almost science fiction right now in terms of what we're experiencing. But let me tell you, we're only a few years away from it because they're already working on it right now.
Well, talking about advances, I just love this stuff. And, talking about, how people talk about vibration and actually levitating items with sound and frequency and remembering reading articles. And this is going back a number of years where they were able to, levitate, I think it was like a seed grain or like a popcorn kernel, something really, really tiny, but it was more about levitation and saying, well, if you can do that at that level, then of course, they got to step it up and, different technology and different things. But I'm like, wow, if they can do that, it kind of, the old images of Spock and the old stuff that we that we grew up with, that people always envisioned in the future, the Jetsons and everything, and of course that was, a lot of it was at the time science fiction, but where science is slowly is at a small level, maybe micro levels, or talking about
what's the difference between a flip phone and a Star Trek communicator? They both flip open and you're talking to it. Seriously. It wasn't a whole lot different.
That's right. That's
exactly
well, and
true.
the same with teleportation. There's talking about
are you familiar with the work of Professor Emoto in Japan? He's the guy who sets up these experiments to create crystals, and then he has his participants.
Lost audio.
Oops, yep, I hit the wrong button. No, that was my fault. They apply emotions to each of their test elements. So, for instance, let's say they have one particular element. Yeah, he did. These are all done with various forms of water, usually freezing them or crystallizing them in some way. And the ones that they applied pleasant emotions to create these really nice, beautiful patterns. The one that they applied really dissonant, angry type stuff to produce this really angry type pattern, and so forth.
Right.
So my friend Louis, who does the Monday show with me and Amy, pointed out to me a couple months ago that he he has a water filter at home, right? And he had his daughter put a piece of tape on the water filter and write the word love on it. And ever since then, he said the water's tasted better. And I said,
Mhm.
well, that I can test that one. I want to see if that's actually true, because we filter our water too.
Yeah.
We do it through a
Yeah.
pitcher, So the next time I filled up the pitcher with water and let it filter through, when I was done, I just put my hands on the pitcher and I just started thinking about love. And then I
Right.
poured it out and I tasted it. And let me tell you, it was actually sweeter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like significantly sweeter. Before, the water
Yeah.
was okay. You
Right.
could tell it was filtered, but it was pretty clear. You could tell there wasn't any
Right.
chlorine in there. But after applying that now I do it every time, because we take old water bottles. We just keep refilling them with a filtered water. And
Right.
every time I fill up a bottle, I'll apply that same principle to it. I'll put the bottle down. I'll forget about it till later on. And then I'll come back and get a cup of water later on. And I'll taste it. Oh boy, that tastes really good.
Right.
It happens every time. It's amazing. So
Yeah.
Professor Emoto's work is, in my experience, is proven out. It really does work.
Right.
You can actually apply it in your everyday life just by, how you filter your water.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's science has proven this, scientifically proven that, our bodies are always communicating with things around it, the light photons, right? We're always communicating with, whether it's that glass of water or whether it's, each other, or without the verbal interaction, but talking about the light photons interacting and talking about the vibration of other things and how we're picking up on its language or its vibration.
Mhm.
And, it's reacting and interacting with us. So when we're putting off or discharging those positive particles, it's taking in that, right? Because we felt it. We've,
That's right.
being around other people in a room that are really positive, really beautiful energy. And we're, somebody saying, I really like that individual. They just seem so,
Yes.
positive. And then you get around somebody else that maybe is just very negative. And we all know that, it's like, I don't like spending time around them because they just feel draining, or the and the negative photons, right? And so the same thing is in this, it's just so fascinating to me, where you can actually, the water, where you can actually taste what positivity tastes like.
That really took me by surprise.
Isn't it?
It shouldn't have taken me by surprise, but it did take me by surprise because of how dramatic it was. I thought, I might taste a little tiny difference. No,
Right.
It was a big difference. It was a much bigger difference than I expected.
Right.
That's what threw me. That's what surprised me.
Well, and the same thing goes too is, you don't have to stop there. You can do the same thing with your food.
Absolutely.
So the thing that I would share is kind of like in my office here, actually, if I was to open the door and show everybody, there's actually a hydroponic growing tower in my office. And so, cucumbers and strawberries and that kind of thing. But one of the things that I always kind of talk to my plants, hey, how you doing? Like, hey, and the positivity, but, I kind of see where it's sitting at, like, hey, what's going on with you, And so, you always hear about the, maybe the crazy old person with the talking to their plants, but there's something to be said about it. If you're interacting in a positive manner with other, living organisms or the living energy, it's going to react.
It's true.
And what you put out comes back.
Well, Barbie, thanks for sending in this list of questions. You gave us
awesome.
A really good show. I mean, lots of good stuff to talk about here.
That was
fabulous. So thank you. And anybody else who's so inclined, that's one reason why we have the LOA Today app out there. If you haven't downloaded it, do so. I'll put a link into the description for this particular episode. And then take advantage of the goodies section where you can find the Ask a Question form. You can use it just to send in commentary as well. And just send stuff in because we will use it on the show. So take advantage of that. Dean, it's been great as usual. Looking forward to next week, but I hope you have a great week.
Absolutely. Walt, thanks so much for having me on again. As always, it's a tremendous honor, and it's always fun to get my daily dose of
absolutely. Well, that's happiness. Why we do it, right? We need to get it. We all need it.
So. My vaccine. I can say I've been vaccinated.
There you go. There you go. Okay, so everything's good. All right, I agree with you completely. So thank you much. Thank you, especially to our podcast
Thank
listeners
you.
as well. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.